Hello gamers, I'm Professor Meg, and welcome back to the Board Game Co. YouTube channel. This is a preview of Divinity Original Sin. Welcome back to the Board Game Co. channel, and this is a preview of Divinity Original Sin. Now don't let this lid fool you, this box is absolutely huge, and it has a ton of content within it. I am so excited to share this with you all. So before I get started, please keep in mind that this is a paid preview. This is a sponsored preview from Larian Studios, and this is a final copy. This is something that is a little different from my previews, but everything you see in front of you is a final production copy, and that is why I am so excited to show it to you, because it is absolutely gorgeous, and we are going to jump right into it. In Divinity Original Sin, players are playing as different origins, such as Sabile here, who is an outlaw, rogue, and corpse eater. They're playing as these different unique origins, leveling them up with different scenarios that you'll be going through in this book-style map, and then after that, you'll be able to power up your different heroes to take on different bosses, and eventually go through the entire game of Divinity Original Sin. This game has a ton of content for you that I will show off in a bit, but just keep in mind that there is a lot of story for you to be able to play through, and many characters for you to explore, and branching paths within those characters that you decide to do, so there is a lot of content to get into. Now, I only have one character set up for you today, but you can play 1 to 4 characters with your friends, and you'll be playing, like I said, through this book-style map, which is very handy to set up quickly and be able to play with your friends over and over to be able to play through these different scenarios. Now, before we get into what the scenarios look like and this beautiful, gorgeous map, we're going to talk a little bit about your origins. Origins have quite a few things going on for them, both on their player board and the deck of cards available to them, and they'll be using this to go through these scenarios, both for different challenges as well as different combat rounds. Now, looking at the board, you can see that we have our action track here. Your action points will be something that you do during combat. You'll gain 4 per turn, and as you upgrade your character, you'll gain more and more. I'll talk about combat in just a bit, but just to explain what that big track here is on your player board, and then you'll have other things such as your backpack, where you would store different items. Right now your limit would be 3, and then you'll have other items that you have equipped, as well as your hand of cards. So the items that I have equipped here as an example are the thick robes, which would be an armor piece for you, and the assassin's dagger, which is a one-handed weapon. When we get into combat, I'll explain what this means a little bit more, but you'll see that people have items that are always in play down here down on your player board, and you also have a hand of cards available when you are playing. Now, this player decided to become a scoundrel and a polymorph. You can see that they have 2 polymorph cards and 2 scoundrel cards, and that is chosen by the background that they chose to do, and it gives them access to different abilities. At the beginning of the game, players also start with this intact source collar. There's a source collar that is basically blocking the magic that you have available to you, and once you are able to remove this collar, at some point throughout the game, you'll become more and more powerful, but for now you are still able to use your source energy to do a few things. For example, after any dice roll made by an origin or enemy, you can spend 1 power of the source to reroll any number of dice that were rolled. So that is an ability that you are automatically able to do, but in the future you'll be able to use your source for other things as well. Now I'm going to generally go over the map and how that plays out, and then after that we'll get into specifics of the different types of turns you can take, such as exploration and then combat. Players will be entering different areas. Every spread of 2 pages is a new area to players. You'll be sent to different places depending on what you do. And sometimes if you choose to go to a certain location, you will lock off yourself from going to other locations later. So what the decisions that you make are very important, and be careful what you choose. Going through the upper beach, players will start in a specific area, for example, the shoreline. Now, when you are taking your turns throughout this, you will start in the shoreline. This is our Sabile character, but for an example, let's grab another character as well. Here is our beast, and they will start off together. Now, this +2 here means that you would take +2 water damage when water damage is done during combat rounds, but right now we don't have to worry about that. This area is also oily, which would do the same for fire damage, but again, we're not in a combat round right now. If we were exploring, Sabile could go up here to the wreckage, and Beast could go down to the cliff face. Now, there is a deck of cards here. you can see that we started in the upper beach, but there are different cards for every area. Now, if we went into the wreckage, we would read a specific card, and the cliff face would also have one where they have different challenge rules that you will be making with choices, and then either rewards or punishments for your failures. But if you see this little symbol here, the hill path and the dunes, you would be drawing 2 cards instead, which means, I'm sorry, not 2 cards, but you would have 2 different cards to choose from. So they would be shuffled and you would be able to explore these 2 areas multiple times. So that would be the exploration phase where players are moving along the board, making these different challenge rolls to see what might happen. An example would be the wreckage, which is where Sabille ended. So I'll read that card for you, and this is the only spoiler I will do in this entire preview. This is the only thing I'm going to read to you because there's so much content in this game. I do want you to explore on your own, but we are going to read this one card together. If you'd like to skip spoilers, you can skip to the timestamp below. Alright, this is wreckage. When you push past the thick foliage, you stumble upon a shipwreck, and several magisters dead around it. Vines sprout from their eye sockets, with shriveled eyeballs on the ends of their stalks that track your movement. Blech. Each origin here may make a challenge roll to loot the bodies while avoiding the vines. If no one does, place this card in the holding area. Now the holding area is going to be a side over here that I'll explain after the spoiler. Alright, and you would roll the 3 white die, plus you would be able to add an extra die if you had the necromancer, cultist, or rogue tag. And then after resolving the roll, you would see that if you had 0 successes, the vines grab you, injecting you with a poisonous venom. Roll 2 red die and take that much poison damage equal to the damage rolled. Gain poisoned within your timer track here. And with 1 to 2 successes, react to your presence. The vines reach out and grab you. Roll 2 red and take that much damage equal to it rolled, but you don't take the poison damage. But if you happen to get 3 or higher, you grab something of value while dodging the vines. Draw a level 1 item. So that would be a way for you to be able to get an item instead and something useful if you felt brave enough to take on the challenge. Alright guys, spoilers aside, something did come up that I do want to tell you about, is that some of these events, when they do come up, if you decide that you don't want to do them, there is a holding area. You'd be able to put the cards here in a holding area. I won't say exactly what they are, but just know that if you don't want to do something when you encounter it, you do have the option of encountering it later, so just know that there isn't too much stress for some of the events. Some of them will trigger immediately, and you will have to deal with that. Some of these events will cause enemies to spawn, and when that happens, you will have to fight them. Now we're going to get into combat and explain everything about that. In combat, players are going to have a few options available. You're going to start with a certain number of action points based on your character and their level. For example, Sabille here at level 1 has 4 action points available, so she would start with 4 on her tracker here. Then she would spend them to take different actions, both based on the cards that she has, as well as standard actions that you are able to do. Among these standard actions are moving. You can move 1 space for each of these action points used, which would move you along these major points on the board. You would be able to taunt for 1, which is moving an enemy in an adjacent space into your space to be able to attack them. For another one, you are also able to equip an item. You're able to trade goods. And for 2 action points, you're able to recover, which is if no enemies are in your space, either heal 2 or slide 1 status effect left, 1 cooldown slot. And for 1 action point, you're also able to revive, which is transfer any number of health to a downed origin in your space or an adjacent one to revive them, but that would come from your own health dial, which is right here. Sabille is at 7. She would have to pay to be able to revive a friendly person. Now, you've heard me mention the cooldown track a few times, so let's get into how these cards are played. For example, if I wanted to use this Scoundrel Throwing Knife card, it costs 2 action points, but it also has a little 1 here within the time symbol, which means it would have to go into my 1 spot on my cooldown track. This is how you get cards back throughout the game. Some will cost you much more, and then you'll have to wait rounds to get them, or you'll have to do things that will move cards down your cooldown track to be able to get them back faster. So if I use my throwing knives, I would resolve the effects of the card, and then put it here in my 1 cooldown track, meaning I wouldn't be able to get it back this round unless I did something to push it 1 down on the cooldown track. Now, when using this card, its range is 1 in single, which means that it is going to attack 1 enemy within range 1. And then it has a 2W plus the command sign, and it's a melee attack, which means that you would be rolling 2 white dice. Then Sabille would be able to add 1 automatically to the damage, and it is a melee attack. So we are going to roll our dice here. Now this is a great example because this is a very specific symbol. This symbol will trigger when it happens to have a special ability on your card. For example, my throwing knife says, if you are invisible, roll 2 blue instead of 2 white. For each of that symbol rolled, you add an additional 3 damage. So this attack would be doing 4 damage because I have a 1 here and I would have the 3 damage from that. But for example, if I had rolled this instead, that would be 3 straight damage plus the 1, which would be 4 as well. Now conditions are just like the cards that you play, and they also go in your cooldown track. Conditions are going to affect you negatively instead, and they will take time on your cooldown track to be removed from your board and stop affecting you. For example, a character can become blinded. The range of all of your skills and items is reduced to 0. You roll -1 die on all attacks. If you were blinded and it was set to your 2 on your cooldown track, it would stay here and take 2 turns to be able to cycle out unless you did things such as recover. Now this works similarly for your enemies as well. You can see that enemies have their cooldown tracks, so the different effects that you'll be doing to them will be placed there. Direct damage will be done to these dials here, but you will be placing different effects on them as well, which will be extremely useful because some cards will play off of different effects, such as this Tentacle Lash card, which we also have from our Polymorph background, which is if your target is already blinded, add 2 damage. But if you roll any of that special symbol, your target gains blinded. Now it would add blinded to their 2nd level slot, which means you can continuously keep them blinded as well if you continuously roll this symbol. But if they're already blinded, you will be able to do extra damage, which means that having the status on them can be very useful for players. Your origins will be moving around the board, taking different exploration and combat phases. There are also rest phases that you can take that are a little bit less common, but you'll be exploring through the story, going through the different locations, seeing what you can, and perhaps ignoring certain locations if you think that they're not worth it or a bit too dangerous, and then moving on to an entirely new location to see what it has to offer. In between this, you'll be leveling up your character, getting new cards and items, as well as specifically changing your character card to have it have different and better abilities, such as having better health, more action points, and better abilities. For example, Sabine starts here with, when you defeat a boss, you may learn 1 skill you meet the prerequisites for. After that, she'll have better abilities available, but I'm going to keep everything spoiler-free in this preview, so I will not show you what that is. Now you can see that I have talent slots here. Those are things that you'll be gaining as well as you level up your character, that you'll have talents that are things that are available to you and you're specific to your character that will feel very custom to how you choose to play. You'll be able to develop this based on how you are choosing your cards with your different backgrounds and what you want this character to play like and to be well-rounded for your team, or not, if that's your choice. But you'll have a lot of choices here and be able to choose completely different things the next time you play. Now, there is also this time clock here when you are playing through the different areas. Your round marker will go down and different things will trigger when you hit certain points. For example, you can see here that B will be triggered when you hit the 3rd to last round, and C will be triggered at the end when you hit 0. So you are on a time clock that you aren't able to infinitely explore, and there are reasons for you to get out as quickly as possible in different circumstances. There are also boss battles that you'll encounter, and bosses do behave a bit differently. There's an entire book for you to run the bosses, and they have decks of their own, and they'll all have different twists and turns that feel unique per boss. Now, before I get into the end, I just want to show you how much content is actually in this game, so to be completely spoiler-free as possible, I will show you exactly what is in this tray, and just don't look too hard, don't pause anything if you don't want any spoilers. Alright, so this is a great example just for you to see how much playable content there is. The beach that we were looking at is only this many cards in this stack, so you can see just how many locations you have available to go to. This is an entire section of locations for you to explore. Oh my goodness, it might be too big for my hands, honestly. But these different rows here as well are things that you'll be able to do, both people that you will be fighting, and this is our boss deck, so this is how many boss encounters that you have to go through, but there are also the different items that you'll be gaining to be customizing your character, that you can choose different armor and weapons that will feel extremely custom to the talents that you've chosen and the origins that you have chosen to do. This has been Divinity Original Sin. I hope that you have enjoyed this preview because there is quite a lot for you to look at. Everything is final done. This is the final game, so you are able to check it out now in the link down below. And thank you again to Larian Studios for sponsoring this video. I am Professor Meg, and if you are interested in more Divinity Original Sin, there are already 2 playthroughs on the channel, so those will also be linked down below for you to check out the playthroughs that we've done, and you can see more of the actual gameplay as well. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!